My name is Dr. Leonard Whitmore, though most people have always called me Leo. I was born in Asheville, North Carolina, tucked into the rolling arms of the Blue Ridge Mountains. If you've ever been there, you know those hills carry a kind of weight, like they watch you as you grow up, as if they are keeping records of what kind of man you turn into. I came into this world the son of a factory worker who spent his hands and his back for every meal we ate, and a mother who played the organ at a little Baptist church that always smelled like old hymnals and wood polish. Faith was never absent from my childhood, but I never saw it as warmth or love. For me, church was duty. Sit up straight. Keep your shirt tucked. Don't fall asleep when the preacher goes on too long. I loved my mother's music, but those hymns always felt like reminders that God was someone I owed, not someone who loved me. I was a quiet, curious kid. I kept more books than toys, and by the time I hit high school, my whole life had shifted because of one accident. I played football back then, and a bad tackle nearly destroyed my knee. It should have ended my days of running and climbing the hills, but a determined physical therapist worked with me for months. He didn't just fix my body, he showed me that science and care could rebuild a person. That experience planted a seed in me. I wanted to be that person for others. So I studied hard, left my small town, and became a physiotherapist. I built a life in Jacksonville, Florida, where people came to me broken and left walking straighter. To me, that was more powerful than any sermon. I respected faith as a cultural anchor, but deep down I dismissed it. I told myself people needed myths to cope, but I didn't. My hands and my knowledge could bring healing. I even told patients more than once, the body heals itself. God has nothing to do with it. Still, I won't lie to you. At night, sometimes when the clinic was quiet and the fluorescent lights buzzed, a thought would crawl up on me. What if they see something I don't? I had patients who claimed they saw angels at their bedside. Some whispered about light and voices while they were under anesthesia. I would nod, smile, and file it under brain tricks. But deep inside, a small part of me wondered if I was missing something. Life carried on like that for decades. By the time I was in my early 60s, I was respected, financially comfortable, and still proud of my steady hands. But underneath it all, there was a hollowness I could never explain. I filled it with antique cars, long nights in the garage, greasy hands, and the smell of oil and chrome. Those machines were my church. They were something I could control. I never imagined that inside that same garage, under the weight of a restored Mustang, I would bleed out on the floor and step into something I could never control. I never imagined I would leave my body behind, tumble into a darkness deeper than the grave, and see with my own eyes what my mother's hymns had warned me about since childhood. I never imagined I would see Charlie Kirk in hell. The moment the weight of that Mustang crushed down, I felt a sharpness tear through my chest. The chrome split like glass and a shard buried itself just above my heart. My breath caught, and I could taste iron rushing up my throat. I couldn't even scream. The radio in the corner, which hadn't worked right in years, suddenly crackled to life. A preacher's voice cut through the static. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. Then everything went black. But it wasn't the nothingness I always believed in. It wasn't a dream or a chemical trick in the brain. No, it was a fall. My body was gone, yet I was falling, tumbling, plunging into something so vast it swallowed me whole. It felt endless. The air, if I can even call it air, was thick, alive, pressing against me like a living creature. I kept thinking, this isn't possible. I'm still thinking, I'm still aware. The darkness wasn't empty. It moved. It breathed. It pressed closer the deeper I fell. At first, there were no sounds, only a suffocating silence. But then came whispers, low, broken voices, muttering in languages I didn't understand, but the intent was clear. Hate, mockery, accusation. The words curled around me like smoke. I landed, or maybe I was just stopped. My feet touched something that felt like ground, but it wasn't solid earth. It was like standing on ash that burned without flame. And then I saw it. Off in the distance, a faint glow, red and shifting. I stumbled toward it, drawn against my will. The glow grew until it was all around me, fire, but not like any fire I'd seen before. These flames didn't climb upward. They reached downward, like hands dragging light into the pit. The stench hit me next. Sulfur, rotting flesh, burned hair. Smells so foul they forced themselves into my lungs even though I wasn't breathing. My stomach twisted, but there was no body to vomit from. It was like my soul itself recoiled. And then the screams came. At first one, then hundreds, then thousands. The sound was so raw it tore through me, not just around me but inside me, echoing in the hollow places of my soul. I turned and saw them, people. Not shadows, not vague shapes, but people. Real faces. Some twisted in terror, some locked in endless cycles of torment. They were chained, clawing at their bonds, burning and yet never consumed. The fire didn't destroy them. It became part of them. Their flesh peeled, their bones glowed, and yet they did not die. The agony never ended. I saw a man clawing at his own eyes, shrieking that he had seen too much. A woman biting through her tongue, yet it grew back, only for her to bite it again. A young man hammered at his own skull with fists that bled but healed in seconds, forced to repeat the madness. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The landscape stretched endlessly, a plain of torment, fire and shadow stretching farther than sight could reach. And above it, not a sky but a ceiling of black smoke, moving like a sea of snakes. It pressed down, trapping us all. Somewhere in the crowd, I recognized faces. A neighbor who had once cursed God during his sickness. A teacher from my childhood who mocked anyone who prayed. Even a cousin who had overdosed years earlier, his face still marked by the same scars I remembered from his funeral. They all screamed, all reached toward me, begging for help, for water, for mercy. But their voices dissolved into the wails of thousands more. I tried to speak, but when I opened my mouth, only a dry gasp came out. That was when the whispers returned, louder this time, circling me like vultures. You mocked him too. You told them he had nothing to do with healing. You belong here. The words stabbed deeper than the shard of chrome had. My pride, my so-called certainty, cracked under the weight of it. I realized this was not a dream, not some hallucination. I was standing in the very place I had always laughed off. I was standing in hell. And the worst part was the sense, not just of punishment, but of permanence. This wasn't temporary. Time didn't move here. There were no clocks, no escape routes. Just forever. That's when I saw the chains moving in the fire, as if something was dragging them closer. I knew I wasn't just a visitor. I was being claimed, but I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, staring at the endless ocean of fire and anguish. Time meant nothing. Every second felt like it could stretch into eternity. My mind screamed that I was dreaming, that I was hallucinating, but my soul knew better. This was more real than the world I had left behind. The chains clattered closer. They didn't just move across the ground. They slithered like serpents, alive and purposeful. When they wrapped around someone, the fire surged, and the victim shrieked as if their very existence was being ripped apart. I stumbled backward, but the ground beneath me rippled and pushed me forward, forcing me deeper into that terrible plane. That's when I saw him. Among the faces contorted in agony, one figure stood out with terrifying clarity. His hair, his sharp jawline, the familiar way he carried himself even in torment. I recognized him instantly from television clips and speeches. Charlie Kirk. I froze. My first thought was denial. No, it can't be. He's alive. He's not supposed to be here. But there he was, bound in heavy chains, flames licking up his body, his mouth opening in a howl that shook me to the core. And then, he spoke. Do you see it now? His voice cracked, torn by screams, but the words were clear. Do you see where pride leads? Do you see what happens when you trade truth for influence? His eyes locked on mine. They weren't filled with political fire or clever rhetoric like on the stage. They were hollow pits of regret. I told them what they wanted to hear, he groaned, not what they needed. I mocked his name while pretending to defend it. I thought success would shield me. But nothing shields you here. Nothing. I staggered back, my chest heaving though I had no lungs. Every word cut through me, because I knew my sin wasn't all that different. I hadn't stood at podiums, but I had stood in treatment rooms, telling people they didn't need God, that their bodies would heal on their own. I had mocked faith in quieter ways, but the poison was the same. Suddenly, the chains shifted. They wrapped around me, cold, heavy, biting into something deeper than flesh. I screamed as they pulled, dragging me toward the fire. My wound from the accident flared with searing pain, as if hell itself pressed its finger into it. The heat was unbearable, but worse than the fire was the hopelessness. There was no bargaining here. No second chances. No I'm sorry, I'll do better. It was as if every excuse I had ever used in life was burned away, leaving only raw truth. I had lived proud. I had lived blind. And now I belonged among the damned. The voices of the lost rose around me. Some cursed. Some begged. Some screamed apologies into the void. But nothing changed. The air was thick with despair, a despair that felt eternal. I thought of my mother's hymns, the ones I had rolled my eyes at as a boy. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. I would have given anything to hear that sweet sound in that place, but all I heard was torment. Charlie's voice rose again, louder this time, carried by something beyond his own strength. Tell them, he cried, writhing in chains. Tell them this is real. Don't let them follow me here. Don't let them think pride will save them. It won't. It never will. The words rattled through me, filling me with a terror deeper than the flames themselves. Because I knew, if I ever left this place, if I was ever given breath again, I would carry this moment like a brand burned into my soul. The chains tightened. The fire surged. My knees buckled, and I collapsed into the ash. My voice broke into sobs. I wasn't just afraid. I was undone. All the years of mocking, of arrogance, of self-sufficiency, collapsed into one desperate confession that tore itself from my being. God, I was wrong. The words were weak, but they were all I had left. My strength was gone. My pride was ashes. My hope was gone. And in that moment, when I thought I had been fully claimed, when I knew all hope was truly gone, a light pierced the darkness. The light was not like fire. Fire in that place devoured, mocked, consumed. This light was different. It did not burn me. It wrapped around me. It cut through the smoke, through the screams, through the weight of despair. For the first time since the car crushed me, I felt something other than terror. I lifted my head, and there he was. Jesus. I had seen paintings growing up, Sunday school pictures of a gentle man with long hair and soft eyes. But this was no painting. This was power, glory, and mercy woven together in a way I cannot explain. His face shone with a radiance that silenced the flames. His eyes met mine, and in that instant he knew everything about me. Every sin, every denial, every cruel laugh at his name. I wanted to look away, but his gaze held me, not in judgment alone, but in a love so fierce it hurt. The chains that bound me trembled, then shattered like glass. I fell forward, gasping, though I had no lungs to breathe. The demons that had pulled at me screeched and recoiled, their forms shrinking in the brilliance of his presence. Even the fire seemed to bow. He reached out his hand, scarred and glowing, and placed it against my chest, right where the shard of chrome had pierced me. Warmth flooded through me, and I felt the wound close. His voice filled the space, not loud, but commanding, echoing deeper than sound. You turned from me all your life, he said, but I never turned from you. This is your warning, Leo. Go back. Tell them. Show them. Do not waste this gift. I could not speak. Tears, real tears, poured from me in a place where water should not exist. All I could do was weep, because I knew I had been spared what I deserved. And just as suddenly as he appeared, the ground beneath me gave way. The flames, the screams, the shadows, they all fell away like smoke in the wind. I was pulled upward, into light, into life. I woke to chaos. Sirens, shouts, the crushing weight of pain pulling me back into my body. My chest burned where the shard had torn me, and the paramedics were shouting over one another, pressing on the wound, telling me to hold on. I coughed up blood and air filled my lungs again, but my mind was still in that other place. For days, I couldn't speak of it. How could I? A man who mocked faith now claiming he had seen hell itself? Every part of me was shaken. At night I would close my eyes and hear the screams, see the chains, smell the sulfur. And then, just as strong, I would feel his hand on my chest, hear his words, "This is your warning." I wrestled with it, torn between the life I had lived and the truth I had been shown. My pride told me to forget it, call it trauma, a hallucination. But my soul knew better. What I had seen was more real than the life I had come back to. When my body healed enough to move again, I found myself living differently. The garage where I almost died became a place I could barely enter without trembling. Instead, I opened the Bible that had gathered dust on my shelf for decades. The words no longer felt like myths. They felt alive, sharp, cutting into me the way the shard of chrome once had. But this time to heal, not destroy. I began speaking carefully at first, to my family, to a few patients I trusted. I told them I had seen hell. I told them I had seen Charlie Kirk in Torment, chained and broken, warning others not to follow his prideful path. Their eyes widened, some doubted me, some wept, but I could not keep silent. My new quest was simple, though it terrified me, to testify. To tell anyone who would listen that eternity is not a story, and hell is not a metaphor. I had walked its plains. I had felt its chains. And I had been pulled out only by grace. I live every day now as a man marked. Marked not by the scar on my chest, though it is there, but by the fire I saw, by the screams I will never forget, by the eyes of Charlie Kirk chained in agony. His voice still echoes in my ears. Tell them. Don't let them follow me here. That was not just his cry. It became my mission. I am no longer the same physiotherapist who once told patients that God had nothing to do with healing. I still help bodies mend, but now I know the body is only a shell. It is the soul that carries weight beyond this life. When I place my hands on someone in pain, I pray silently for them, because I know pain does not end at death. Death is not an ending. It is a doorway. I lost count of how many nights I've jolted awake, drenched in sweat, hearing the rattling of chains in my dreams. But instead of cursing them, I thank God for them. Because they remind me what I was spared from, and what countless others still march toward without realizing it. So I speak, wherever I can, in small church halls, in living rooms, in clinics and waiting rooms. I do not preach as a pastor. I confess as a man who was dragged to the brink of hell and pulled back. My words are not polished. They shake. They stumble. But they are true. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Hell is real. Pride will blind you. And Jesus alone can break the chains. I am living proof of that mercy. I should have died in my garage that night, swallowed in fire. Instead, I was given another chance. This is my new beginning. And as long as I have breath, I will use it to warn, to testify, and to point to the one who pulled me out of the flames.